We have two speakers tonight. Our first speakers are Betty and Melody from Pikes Peak Library District. They're going to come in and talk to you guys about the different resources that you can get at the library and why it's important for all of us who have a library card, because they do a lot more than just for checking out books, and they have a lot of great programs that you can be involved in that are also free. So we love free here. So I'm going to welcome Melody and Betty up.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Melody Alvarez. I am the Early Literacy Librarian for the Pikes Peak Library District. And today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of reading to your child starting at birth. I see a few young ones in here, but I also see older ones, so this might not pertain to you, but you could help spread the word to the community. So, did you know that your child's brain at the age of 3 is 80% of an adult brain? So, it's very important to start reading to your baby starting at birth. So we want to make sure that we start reading. We're always talking, singing, playing, and doing finger plays and such with your baby. So how do we do all of that? And how do we get our children to start learning to read and start to be interested in books at a young age? Again, it all starts at 0. So when you have a baby, up until the age 5, there are 5 early literacy tips that I'm going to talk to you about today, and hopefully give you ideas of ways to use those tips with your little ones, if you have little ones. Maybe you have nieces or nephews, or just anyone to share. So the first tip is read. My
mom made me where I was able to fluently read by the age of 3.
What's that?
I was able to fluently read by the age of 3.
So you must have started reading right at birth. Well, that's great.
Here for Children's Literacy Center, so I already,
Yeah, so that's a perfect example that you are your child's first teacher, your first and best teacher. So you want to make sure that you are a good role model. But at any age, starting at birth to high school, if your child is seeing you reading, they're going to be encouraged and they're going to want to read. They're going to want to be around books. So I encourage you to have books everywhere, in the car, in the bathroom, every single room. Always have books so that they could pick up books, newspapers, magazines, anything to read. But especially that 0 to 5 age, they see you reading, they're going to become interested in books. When you're reading to a child at a young age, you're introducing the world to them. You know, they're young, they're babies, they're toddlers, everything is new to them. So you're introducing everything, that this is up, this is the ceiling, this is the floor, and they're learning all of that through the books, through the pictures in the books. So talk about the pictures, talk about everything that's going on in the world. And that brings us to step 2, which is talk. It's very important to talk to your babies, toddlers, and preschoolers about everything and anything. Just talk. But what's most important and helps brain development are conversational turns. So you want to get that back and forth conversation with your child, asking more open-ended questions, not just yes and no answers, but really getting them to talk. When you're reading a story and you're looking at the pictures, talk to them about the pictures and really asking them the questions and describe what's in the pictures. The next tip is sing. So singing stretches out the syllables of words. When you're singing, they're hearing the sounds of each word, so that helps. And not only that, but children love hearing your voice. It's so soothing to them. And remember, you were the first voice that they heard when they were in the womb. So you want to make sure that you're singing, and don't worry how your voice is. If you don't have a good singing voice, they don't care. They just like that comfort of hearing you. So the next is play, and play really stimulates the brain. So we want to make sure that we're getting down and we're playing with our children, even at age 8, even at age 10. They love seeing you act silly, and they love playing with you. So from that 0 to 5, they're learning their social skills. They're learning how to take turns. They're learning about the world around them in play. And a lot of times you might see a child playing with blocks and using it as a telephone. That's their way of, interpreting their world around them. So you want to make sure that you're playing and letting them get messy, because children learn through their senses. And the last tip is write. So when we're writing, when they're seeing print, they're learning about letters. They're learning that letters look different. An O looks different from an A. An A has straight lines, an O is curved. So they're learning that these letters look different, they sound different, and these letters put together make up words. So when you're reading a book and you're pointing out and underlining the words as you go along the page, you're introducing that these mean something, that we're making up words and they have meaning. So you're teaching this to your 5 and under, and this is all new to them, and then they're becoming interested in books. So those are the 5 tips. Now we want to talk about how to get your kids engaged in reading when you have that 0 to 5. So again, you want to read picture books to them. Wordless books are great to read because that really encourages you to talk to your child. It encourages them to talk to you, to talk about the picture. I want to also point out that if your child wants to hear a story 20 times over and over again, read that book to them 20 times, because you're encouraging them and you're giving them a positive outlook on reading. If you say no, then you're making reading more negative. So you always want to make sure that even if you're tired of hearing chicka chicka boom boom 20 times, sing it one time, or change it up, or have them help you read it by the pictures on the book. So just change it up and just really encourage that reading. And you just want to have fun. So when you're reading to a child, don't read like this. You want to have voices and be like really into the story, and change your voice and just have fun, because then you're demonstrating that reading is fun, and they're going to want to pick up a book, and then they're going to imitate you, and that's good. So we just want to make sure that you're really pointing out the words on the story. You're showing them how a book works when you're reading, that a book has pages and it turns and you read, from top to bottom. And so you're just really demonstrating and showing the 5 and under how to use a book. So those are some tips to get kids reading or interested in reading. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, well, we also have a lot of early literacy programs at the library. A lot of you saw the babies resource fair that we're having. I left brochures at the front. And we also do baby time programs, toddler time programs, and preschool programs. So we're really trying to get parents in the habit of reading with their children and having fun, and bringing them to the library for our early literacy programs is a great way to do that. And they're offered at all of the library locations. So thank you.
Okay, well, my name is Betty McDonald, and I'm just going to attempt to get to PPLD Kids here. Are you all familiar with ppld.org? Yes. All right. The website changed this summer, and so it kind of hides a little bit under services, PPLD Kids. Have you found PPLD Kids? All right, well, good, awesome. There is also a teen website. And so as Melody has brought us up to probably age 5, I'm here to take up after age 5 and reading. And so what is the big deal about reading? I'm not sure if you've heard about how kids are behind by the age of, or the grade 3. And how some schools are just maybe passing them on to the 4th grade, 5th grade, and they never catch up to their reading level. There are some things that you can do while your children are young, or even whatever age they are. And one of them is to keep them reading over the summer. Pikes Peak Library District always has a summer reading game for everybody in Colorado Springs. Anybody here ever hear of Summer Adventure? It usually happens June 1st to July 31st. It's basically a way to keep your child reading and keeping up that skill that they've learned in that grade that they've just finished. And they earn little prizes. You know, don't get your expectations up. But, you know, little prizes, and it's some fun for them. Plus, this summer we've had over 900 free programs in all the 14 library locations. And so something is always going on, whether it's infant or whether you're 12 or whether you're 16. So summer adventure, just keeping up that skill over the summer. Another thing oh, and by the way, there is a handout if you want to grab that as you leave. At the East Library, it used to be at different locations, but at the East Library, there's a program called Study Buddies, and that is called Reading Buddies in the summer. And what that is you bring in your child and let them read with a teen volunteer, just to get a little practice. And that's at the East Library. I know it's a little far from here, but another thing is Pause to Read, and that is at more locations. And that's just bringing in your child to read to a dog. You know, the dog's not going to judge them. And so it's fun to pet the dog and to read to the dog and to get that reading practice. Sometimes kids just get tired of reading for you. And so, you know, that's just the truth of it. So, you know, take them to the library, have them read to a dog, you know. Now, on PPLD Kids, I just wanted to show you a couple things. We do have a read section right there. And so you're going to get this reading going, and maybe it's summertime or in the evening, and you're trying to figure out a way to get your child to read more. Okay. Well, I get the question quite a bit. What do I do with my child who doesn't like to read, but needs to? What can I do? Well, sometimes I will show people, let's see if I can manage this. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry, oh, there it is. Read online. Have you ever heard of Tumble Books? Tumble Books is something that you can use with your library card. It doesn't require a pin. And basically, these are animated storybooks. And what's nice about them is that it has the reading right in front of the kids, so they can either turn off the help or read it themselves at their own pace. There are also novels in here that you can read on those read-alongs. And this website is, you can translate the whole thing into Spanish or French. And so these books, let me see if I can, oh, okay, here we go. I'm getting the hang of this now. Like Anne of Green Gables, Black Beauty. Now, there's some discussion in the library sometimes about classics. Sometimes parents will come in wanting children to read what they read as a child. Treasure Island, or name one. What's your favorite book? Anne of Green Gables? What did you say?
Oh, I said Pride and Prejudice, but that's way cool.
Yeah, Pride and Prejudice. But, you know, there's so many, a lot of years have gone by since I was a kid, obviously. And the books that were new when I was a kid are now classics. So there really are modern classics as well. You know, Beverly Cleary. Beverly Cleary writes classic books. Ramona Quimby, does that sound familiar? Yeah. And there's all kinds of things like that. Even though you can encourage your child to read your favorite book, eventually, when they're learning to read and trying to get that habit going, it's actually best to let them read what they want. So you go to the library, you have an idea of what you're hoping your child will pick out, but all they want is a graphic novel or a comic book. And honestly, it's best to let them just get what they want, because then they practice reading and they're motivated to do it, rather than trying to read the classic you want them to read. I know those might be hard words, but it's really true. Okay. So Tumble Books is a great resource you can get at home.
For the Tumble books, can they read them but also listen to them after reading or no?
It's actually talking animated books.
And they have the words while they're...
And the words are there. Yeah, and the words are highlighted as it goes along. Yeah.
The app as well as the website?
Yes, there is an app too. Yeah. Okay. Let me get out of here. Okay. I'm just giving you little bits through here. Another thing is we have a section just for reading lists. And we have these in hard copies in the libraries, but if you wanted to get a head start at home, you could take a look at any of these lists. And then if you have a library card, you can put books on hold at home. And now the hold process is such that they're not waiting for you when you come to the library an hour later. It takes a couple days. Once they enter that hold process, it takes a day or two for you to get it, just to be clear about that. But
Do you mean to get a physical copy or it's
a physical copy, yeah. But you could always call your nearest library and have them pull it for you and have it waiting for you. Wouldn't that be nice? Just give us a call. We're happy to do that. All right, so reading lists. And there is a long list here of reading lists, and these are made by staff and updated as often as we can possibly get to it. All right. Let's see, what else? Oh, this novelist is a database. This is I can't say the word, subscription we buy for you to use as a card holder. All right, sorry I have to log in. I'm not inside the library. Okay, now Nautilus, this again is something you can use. Say your child is telling you they want a mystery, and you could just type in mystery. And as you can see, you get 11,000 options. That's too many. So over on the side here, say your child is 9. You can select age. You can select fiction. You don't want anything back in 1861. Let me see. I'm going to put this mic down just a second. Okay, so we moved the date and update results. And let's see how many we get now. All right, down to 2,000. Do you see that where I'm pointing? The number of titles? Okay. Now, that's not good enough because your child is saying, Mom, I want a funny one. So you can go down and you could actually pick the tone of the book. And you can get yourself 202 funny mysteries, okay? Now the catalog, the library catalog does not do this for you. This is what I love about this. And then you can also check availability here with the library's collection, okay? And Sometimes it'll say we don't own it, which is sad, but sometimes it'll say 2 out of 4 copies on the shelf or something. And so then you can go put that on hold or call the library. Does that all make sense? There is an adult one, Novelist, and that's on the adult side. And that's great for, you know, you all. All right. I know I'm going to go over my time, but any questions about Novelist? That was like a speck of what's in this database. A lot of book lists in here as well. A lot of if you like lists. In fact, let me just show you the main one here. I'll go home. And down on the left side here, if you like, there's Harry Potter and the Lightning Thief. And so those books that your child has read many times and you're just hoping they can find something else. So check this out. It's very handy. Okay, so that is Novelist. And let's see. Trying to get back to where I need to be. Okay. Anything else on read? Let's see. I think I'll stop there. Now, wanted to also show you. Now, again, you are a little far from the East Library, but the ERC is on the 2nd floor of the East Library. It's the only one in the whole district. It's the Educational Resource Center. And this is a place that was started, originally a survey was taken of homeschool families. And the one thing that came out of that 15 years ago was that they wanted us to be able to lend out equipment, microscopes, you know, expensive things that, you know, families could not afford. And so the Educational Resource Center came out of that. And it's only 800 square feet, which is not a very big space, but it has microscopes for you to use there, snap circuits, little bits, you know, those expensive things. Just today, I was at a homeschool cottage program up in Monument, and we did owl pellet dissection. How many of you have done an owl pellet dissection? All right. Well, I learned today that they have that to do in the ERC anytime. What? I didn't know that. I know. That was my response. What? So all kinds of neat kits that you can come and work with your child. On the weekends, they're open Saturday afternoon. And yeah, it's a great place. Come check it out. Oh, and one major thing I am leaving to the end, but I don't want to miss, is Brain Fuse Help Now. I'm going to just quick go into our homework. You can find Brain Fuse Help Now anywhere on our website. We try to promote it as much as possible. And again, take a handout just so you can remember it. How many of you know about Brain Fuse Help Now? Awesome. Okay. This is a tutoring resource for you that the library buys, and it's free for you with your library card. And basically, from kindergarten through college, you can get connected on a skills building. So whatever skill or subject you need help with, reading, social studies, math, you put in your grade, and you can take a little quizzes on those subjects. The live tutoring is exactly what it means. You get connected with a tutor, and this is the platform. So no emails are exchanged or anything like that. But I've even sat a girl down at a computer in the library. She had a math question that I couldn't answer. And so I connected her with a live tutor, and I stood there and watched because I actually hadn't seen it. And he was writing on the whiteboard on the computer, wrote out her question, and could talk to her. It was crazy. And then the electricity went out. So, but it was going really well until then. All right, so there's all kinds of things on here. Live tutoring. And all the people out there tutoring many of them have master's degrees in their subjects. And yeah, they get paid by BrainFuse Help now, so they're legit. Okay, a writing lab, you could send in your paper and wait 24 hours and it comes back corrected, okay? And Skill Surfer is the skill area, send a question. Language lab is just Spanish. I think they want to do more languages, but it's just Spanish. Over in this study are ways to collaborate with other students. Maybe you're in a study group or something. And also over in this section here, you can make flash cards here. Okay, that is what did I do? That was fast, but let me just also show you. And the skill surfing is preparing for the SAT, the ACT, the ASVAB test. Is that how you say that? For adults. All kinds of standardized testing. And so you can take SAT tests and practice. Okay, and adult learners at the tab at the top here, if I can get in there. Oh, and I should say, this tutoring is available every day, 2 to 11 p.m. So that's what's nice. It goes through the weekend when, you know, the older kids are getting to their homework and don't understand it. And you can remember that BrainFuse can help. Anyway, so in the adult section, you can see here that there's help to write a resume, career resources, Microsoft Office, U.S. citizenship test, and the GED. So lots of stuff for adults as well. On your handout, the very last page is all the detailed information about BrainFuse Help Now. So be sure to take a handout. I gave you also some good articles to read. If you wanted to read more about why read to your child, or why is it so important? And you can find out. All right, thank you so much. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll see you at the library. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, I am Erika Tunson, and I guess all those things are true. I was a first grade teacher for a very long time, but I did teach for 17 years. I taught kinder, I taught second, but I taught first grade for 12 years. So that was really my favorite. Then I was an instructional coach for the district, in Harrison District 2, and now I'm in the assistant principal at Monterey Elementary School. But truly my emphasis has always been literacy, and even when I was coaching literacy. So today I'm going to talk a little bit, and they did a great job at Pikes Peak Library District of kind of how to work with your kids at home and get them to read. And really mine is from a kind of school perspective, supporting your student with reading, what to know, what to ask, and how to help and encourage. Because a lot of times, we don't know questions to ask if we're asking how we help our kids, and a lot of times our solution is just keep reading more. But if we're having struggles, or if there are specific skills we need to work on, there are different things that you want to know how to do. Am I clicking right, Deborah? To the right. I don't know what I just did. Oh, to the right. Got it. Okay, what to know about learning to read. So that's kind of really an important thing. So we know we read to kids and they learn and they get an interest in reading, but kind of there's a flow to it, and there really is a science to reading. So just knowing that really kind of helps whether you are dealing with students who are in school, whether you're their teacher, there is a succession of skills that get you to reading, and when one of those skills is missed is usually when kids begin to struggle. Or so One of the things you have, some of the reading fundamentals, you know, when they are anywhere from pre-K to second grade, they are really learning to read. So they're real emergent readers. That's what they're doing. That's what they're just learning to read. So a lot of times, I know a lot of you have had small children and you have read some of the books over and over that are for kids learning to read. You've read Apples on Top, Green Eggs and Ham, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, Brown Bear, where everything's repetitive and has a lot of things that have a lot of words that kids are learning. They're learning patterns, they're learning rhymes, and so they're learning those basic phonics skills. But in 3rd to 12th grade, students make the transition to reading to learn. So that's when they're starting to read things that they really do need to understand because they're learning from their reading. There really are 5 components to reading, and each component is really necessary for students to be competent readers. And when students are struggling with one or more of the 5 components, this can be an indicator of a reading problem or deficiency and signal some need for intervention. So there really is a flow to it. So you start, just like they said at Pikes Peak Library District, when you're starting and they're listening to sounds and they're hearing sounds and you're doing rhymes and you're doing nursery rhymes and you're playing name games and you're singing, then you really are at the phonemic awareness, because that's all about hearing and hearing sounds. And once they get that, we build on, now that we hear sounds, we can make words with sounds. So you go to phonics, and that's where you're starting to decode words. Then you move into fluency, where now you're a reader who can decode words quickly, who knows sight words, and you're moving on. Then you're building vocabulary, because you turn into that reading to learn, and you're starting to build that vocabulary that you know that really helps you to continue to read things that are more complex. And then finally, the top of the pyramid is really comprehension. Kind of all of these things lead to the understanding of reading. So knowing each component is important, and that they all kind of flow in a succession really helps you to understand like where your kid is going, where your kid is at right now. So definitely that phonemic awareness, like I said, is the hearing sounds and being able to manipulate sounds in spoken words. That's being able to hear that cat rhymes with Matt. And that's being able to say, if I take the C off a cat and I put a P, it turns into Pat. And I can hear all those sounds going. So the phonics piece is where I'm actually looking at the letters now, and I'm saying put, at, pat. And I'm putting those together with rhymes. The fluency piece is just the ability for me to put all the words together and read accurately. The vocabulary is just knowing words and learning words in context and new words and being able to learn them from there. And then the comprehension is definitely the cognitive piece, understanding. So as you can see my arrows there, you start off, and really in your phonics and phonemic, you're leading to fluency. That's your learning to read. And then as you move into vocabulary and comprehension, that's where you're reading to learn. So a lot of times we assess reading skills, and one of the biggest ones across the country is DIBELS. DIBELS is the test. So if you have a student in any kind of school, or you're working with a tutor or whatever, you're going to hear DIBELS. DIBELS, DIBELS, DIBELS. It's even become a verb, like around teachers, like I'm gonna dibble him. He needs to be dibbled. Has he been dibbled? Because it is what we use for those early literacy skills. So a lot of times, and it is actually a program that is out of the University of Oregon. So even if you are homeschooling, it's easy to go on U of Org and see some of that testing that's available. Yes?
My kiddo tested 1 point less than where she needs to be at the end of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
So would you give some suggestions on what I might need to do to help her at this point?
I definitely will. And as we go on, I'm going to give you a lot of questions and resources that you can use to kind of get that so that you can help her. That would be great to get some information so you know exactly how to help her. So DIBELS really are measures that help teachers and schools determine how students are performing on important reading skills. So it's dynamic indicators. So each test is a 1-minute test, and really what it's doing is, do you have the basic skills to read? So that is all it's testing. And so each test has different components, and you can use it K-8, and it's just saying, do you have all the skills you need? So if you're thinking about the continuum, do you have everything you need to become a reader? So a lot of times they're given different tests, like, kindergartners are given a lot of tests for reading because we're just trying to assess that. So we give a test in phonemic awareness. So if you've had a kindergartner or anybody and a teacher is talking, and sometimes they're talking in code, they're talking about first sound fluency. Can your child hear the first sound in a word? Can they hear that fly starts with F? Or you might hear that, phoneme segmentation. Your kid is in phoneme segmentation. They're just giving them a word and they're saying, break it down. So just giving them a word like they might have with. And can your child say, with? And you're just breaking down the phonemes. For the phonics piece, which really becomes really important for first grade readers, is nonsense word fluency. And it seems really silly because the words are not real words, but it's all about, can kids sound out words? And if we give them words they already know, we don't know if they can actually sound out words or if they just know words by sight. So that's why they're nonsense words, and they just go through and they're just learning how to sound out words. And word reading fluency is just when they get to the point that they don't need to sound every sound. So they can go from saying at to looking at the letters and in their head just saying cat. And that's kind of the continuum on phonics. There's also the reading fluency and the oral reading fluency. They give them a test to see how many words they can read in a minute. And a lot of times when students don't hit the number is when they tell you, you're 1 point away from that, you're 2 points away from that because you didn't read enough words in a minute. And sometimes that is simply because you're a slow, accurate reader. I am a slow, accurate reader. Had DIBELS been around when I was in school, I probably would have had a reading deficiency. And I don't. But I am a slow, accurate reader. I don't like to skip words. And so I would have not done well in a minute. So the oral reading fluency is the test where they're just going to see how many words they can read in a minute. And they don't have one for vocabulary, but they do have one for comprehension. And that really is called DAYS, where they just ask them questions about something they've read, and they grade them on how well they did at answering the questions. So it's all just 1 minute, a basic screener. So other ways that we're measuring and getting skills are from state testing and just seeing if they are reading like the rest of their peers. So they're giving CMAS. So a lot of times teachers are talking about their CMAS test results from 3rd grade to 8th grade to 10th grade. And then they're starting for the state giving the PSAT as a way of measuring reading as well. And a lot of schools and programs use things like iReady, Star Reading, as placement tests for school too. So they're just always assessing basic skills to see where kids are. So once you kind of get the results, here are some things, here are some places to go to help. So when you are getting results for your child, or you are like, they're really struggling to understand how to sound out words, one of my favorite resources is Florida Center for Reading Research. There's a lot of activities there that you can make games. You can make games and you can go in different skill sets. If kids are struggling with phonemic awareness, they have a game. You just print them off. They're free resources from the state of Florida. You print them off, you create a game. If they're working on letter sounds, if they're working on phonics skills, all the fundamental skills, Florida Center for Reading Research has different games that you can download. You can download them all, you can make a binder and have different games for kids to play at home to strengthen some of those skills. Also, I really like Reading Rockets. Reading Rockets has a lot of tips for helping at home. And Reading Rockets is one where they even have a parent section. Parents can get a free membership that just kind of tells you how to help your student at home. It might even have, it doesn't might, I know it does for a fact, tells you like, what do I do when my child's struggling? How do I talk to my child's teacher? How do I talk to my child's tutor? How do I know that maybe they are struggling in reading in any kind of way? How do I make it so they can advance in reading? So Reading Rockets has great tips and information on reading instruction. ReadWorks is another one where parents can go in through the teacher sign up and they can get a sign up. And ReadWorks has a lot of comprehension work because it has articles that kids can read. So you can download different articles. There's questions that go with it at all different levels. And I think ReadWorks is a really fun one to do because it works on comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency, and there's some really great articles in ReadWorks. I also really like News ELA because what it'll do, it'll break down news for kids in their reading level, and you can get it for free. But I like it because it takes a current event and I can have my second grader kind of understand something about a current event that my fifth grader is also reading, because you can level the different current events through News ELA. And that can be a free subscription. You know, whenever they have a free subscription, they always have a paid version, but I've only ever used the free one. Starfall, of course, is a great one for K-3 basic reading skills. And it has a lot of stories and a lot of phonics work. So when kids are really learning phonics sounds and letters, that's a great one. And we are even starting at my school sometimes with kids in some after school programs, really using Khan Academy for a lot of their preparation. And they have a great SAT prep for free from Khan Academy. But a lot of times we go there just to help kids with skills and give parents that resource just to take home with them at my school. And then there are some like sight word sites, because you might hear, oh, they don't know their sight words that you have to know by sight because you can't sound them out. Was, things like that, where you just have to know them by sight. And over 80% of what kids read is sight words. So it's really important that they get those sight words. And if you have a great visual memory, sight words are easy. If your memory's not that great, sight words are a challenge. But there are many places where you can go. There's sightwords.com that has a lot of different cards you can print out, and it'll tell you like in order. This is the kindergarten set. This is the first grade set, 3rd through 5th, all the way through all the sight words. By the time they get to 5th grade, I think they know like 500 or 600 sight words. And last year at my school, we did a sight word challenge. And if you learned all your sight words, then on field day, you could throw balloons at me and the principal. I did not think that many kids were going to learn sight words. And I also did not think that small children had strong arms. Yes, it was brutal. It was pretty bad. I didn't think they were going to do that, but it was an incentive and they did it. So what questions to kind of ask when you're supporting your student in reading? Sometimes if you have a teacher or a tutor or anybody, or you're asking anyone about teaching reading, there's just certain questions when you're working with your students that you want to know to ask. Because sometimes I know that talking to teachers or tutors or any kind of reading professionals can sometimes be difficult because you're not asking the questions maybe that are going to get you what you need for your student, whether that's because they're struggling or because you're going to enrich for them. So, teachers and tutors, especially teachers, use a lot of terms or acronyms that parents aren't familiar with. And a lot of times when you meet with a teacher or even somebody who's a reading specialist or tutor, Or sometimes if you're listening even to people, sometimes I've listened to people on Khan Academy and I'm like, but do people know what that means? If you don't teach reading, do you know what that means? So a lot of times, so I have a little section we'll go through, but they're using a lot of terms and acronyms that parents aren't familiar with. And knowing those helps to really get the information you need to make sure you can support your student in the way you need to support them. Ask really specific questions about your students' reading so you know how to be a better support at home. So if you're asking, you're not just like, well, how's he doing in reading? And then your answer is going to be good, bad, great. But that doesn't help me to make him any better or anything like that. So I really need to know what I'm asking, and that you're communicating with teachers and tutors or any reading specialists when you notice a problem. That you're right away saying, you know what, the books are too easy, the books are too hard, my student's not able to do this. So talking to teachers, so teacher terms and talk, which they use a lot of. Like I already went over dibbles. And so they're going to maybe say to you, oh, we did dibbles, and this is where he fell out in dibbles, and then he didn't hit his mark in dibbles, so that now you know to ask, now you know, these are basic skills, and you can start to be more familiar with the test. And know, well, okay, dibbles I know measures where they're going to be, what exactly are they struggling with? They may use terms like ELA, which means English Language Arts, which means reading. Reading, writing, and communicating, which is reading. Reading and writing. So all of those terms may be things that they're using, and you're like, but how's he doing in reading? Well, he's doing great in ELA, but how's he doing in reading? Well, that is reading, basically English Language Arts. So phonemic awareness, like we said, hearing sounds. So if I hear that my child's struggling with phonemic awareness, hearing and manipulating sounds. Phonics, which I said earlier, is just really about sounding out words. So sometimes if they're saying phonics is the trouble. This one is my favorite one, reading fluency. So fluency is really the ability to read text pretty accurately. And a lot of times when students are doing really well in fluency, they can be fast readers, fluent readers, and not great understanders and comprehenders. Or a teacher or tutor tells you, you know what, they are really struggling in reading fluency. And that's where you want to ask more, because a fluency deficiency is a deficiency in phonics. It's not like you're going to go home and I'm just going to keep reading books and it's going to get better. Because if I'm struggling with it, there's an underlying problem. And usually a fluency problem is a phonics problem. So if anyone tells you that they are struggling with fluency, what about fluency? And being able to say, where is it? What are they doing? Is it sight words? Is it phonics? Because there's something else.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way with my youngest son.
Mm-hmm.
They skipped him first grade and started him with a blended second grade because they said, oh, he's so bright. But that first grade piece was so important for him to learn the phonics.
Mm-hmm.
I stuck with him until he figured it out in the 5th grade, and I had to get him special tested and everything. That was expensive to figure out where the problem was.
Mm-hmm. And that really is when you know the continuum of how kids learn to read. And, that's true. You go on, kids learn to read, and then you get to 5th grade and you're not wondering, and somebody's telling you, well, it's the phonics piece that he missed in 1st grade. So just being able to really ask, if my child is doing well in reading fluency, is he understanding what he's reading? Because he's a quick reader, he's an accurate reader, is he understanding it? Or if he is struggling, or she is struggling in reading fluency, where is it? Do they not know sight words? Is it the phonics piece? Where is it? Because a lot of times fluency, we just think, and even some teachers will think like, oh, if I just have them read more, they're just going to get better, because fluency is just about reading over and over. But if there's an underlying problem, reading more isn't going to make it better.
Do you find that when there's a deficiency, when they're in 4th, 5th,
Mm-hmm.
when they're in those later grades, and there is that phonics deficiency, do they usually need like an educational therapy, like some sort of outside piece, or can you I suppose it depends on how big the deficiency is.
I think that if it turns out to be a phonics deficiency, I don't think it's always outside help. I think it's just going back and teaching phonics. And even with older kids, when you get to 4th and 5th grade, you kind of just want to figure out where it is. So there's also, and I didn't put this in my presentation, but there are many samples of what's called the Quick Phonics Screener, QPS, the Quick Phonics Screener. And what that does is that will tell you where in phonics they fall out. Because it may be, he knows all his short vowels, he knows all his long vowels, he's falling out in blends or digraphs. SH is giving him the trouble. Or words with many syllables, multisyllabic words. So the Quick Phonics Screener is just a way, and if you get on, you can probably find a copy of the Quick Phonics Screener. And it'll just kind of drill down to what it is they're missing, if there's a phonics issue, just what it is that they're missing in there. And then that helps you attack it a little better. And usually it's just kind of filling the gap, just intervening and filling the gap. And if that doesn't work, then you might need outside help. But if you're just like, oh, I got it, he doesn't know this. If I can get him to learn this and I can find the resources, I can go to Florida Research Center for Reading Research, and I can get some games that really help him be able to understand blends and digraphs or long vowels or short, whatever it is, then maybe you can just intervene there. And so that's why just kind of knowing and being like, what is the issue? So the Quick Phonics Screener is a way to kind of get down into that. So then, of course, vocabulary refers to words that we must know to communicate with each other. It's also just like knowing the meaning and pronunciation of words. Comprehension, of course, is the understanding and being able to communicate what you read. And sight words, like I said, like, come, does, or who, that just don't follow the rules. Students really are taught to memorize sight words as whole by sight, and like I said, about 80% of their reading will be sight words. So a lot of times, if your student is struggling in reading, or you've heard that, you may hear that they are going on a read plan, which is definitely a plan that is supposed to help them. It's a law. If a student does fall out and is reading below grade, like significantly below grade level, they could be put on a read plan, which is a state law, but it is really meant to be. So if you are in a school and someone says like your child's on a read plan, that is really supposed to be formed with a parent. A parent is supposed to be communicated with often and updated on their child's progress, because that's really the parent's right. And that's how we're supposed to work the program. That parents are a big part of it, and they are informed along the way how their student is doing. And the whole concept is to make sure kids are reading at grade level by 3rd grade. So once they're beyond 3rd grade, they can't be put on a read plan, but if they are on one when they enter 3rd grade, they keep it until they get off and meet their goals. But I think the really important part that sometimes isn't emphasized about that is it really is supposed to be a two-way communication between parent and school. Intervention, so sometimes, especially if you're in a school, you're like, oh, they see the interventionist, there's an intervention group. It's because that means that they are just trying to supplement the reading program because they found something that is missing. So maybe if there's a phonics deficiency, they would have an intervention program that's supposed to bring them up and fill the gap or wherever they're missing. So a lot of times that is something that a teacher might mention, oh, they need intervention. They're in intervention. The interventionist works with him. And that really is just filling in. That's supposed to be filling in the gap, and it should be like a 6-week, and you should be able to see progress. And if I don't see progress, what are we doing? Because I'm not seeing progress, and that's really how you can even support. If anybody tells you like there's your child that needs intervention, they're in an intervention, then I'm tracking it. How's he doing? What are we doing then? Because if it's not working after 6 weeks, we're supposed to change time or intensity. So they shouldn't be spending a year in the same intervention program, because that tells you your intervention's not working. So then sometimes there's just questions, and they said being specific on questions you want to ask. So sometimes there's just questions that you want to make sure that you ask, because if I put on my teacher hat and I go back to sometimes being in parent-teacher conferences or talking to parents about how their students are doing, you know, I'm just probably saying, well, they're asking me, how's he doing? And I'm like, well, he's doing all right. Or, well, his reading, it could be better. It's a little below where his peers are reading, but you know, just keep reading with him at home. And then, but parents don't sometimes know what are the specific questions if I want specific answers. So teachers sometimes just don't give them. But one thing that you definitely want to ask is, what activities can I do to help my child? So if they tell you, well, they're really struggling with phonics, what can I do? What are some things I can do at home? Your child's really struggling with understanding, comprehension. What can I do? And being specific and going in and going like, I know how to support my child. I know what these things mean. So I'm asking you, what can I do? And then just, what does this score mean? When they're just throwing out scores, well, he scored a 55 in this, and then he scored an overall of 168, and then in this area though, he only scored 70. What do these scores mean? What does that mean that you're saying he is core on Dibble's testing? What does that mean? What does it mean when you say his composite score is 165? What does that number mean? But really asking to get answers. What does that score mean? What does that answer? I don't understand. What programs does the school offer to support reading? And are there any community resources for tutoring? Because a lot of times there are. And a lot of times what we've even done at my school is we have some after-school programming, and we get funding to do after-school programming. And we always focus it on 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. But we did have some parents on a survey, and a couple of parents just come to school, what do you have for kindergarten through 2nd grade? And it really stopped, and the principal and I stopped and said, nothing. We really don't offer anything for them. So simply by people asking us what we have, now we have a K2 reading program too. So sometimes it's just about, what do you offer? And when the school can say, we have an after-school tutoring program, oh, but it's only for 3rd through 4th grade, 3rd and 4th graders. Then you're saying, well, do you have anything for kindergarten? Do you have anything for 1st graders? Because I really would like my students to get that extra support. And if we're offering before and after school programming, then as a parent, you can advocate for, I really want something for younger kids. Or even if my older kid is staying after school to do a reading program, is there something my younger student can be doing there too? So I think asking those questions and asking and really kind of demanding, what is the support we have? What are other things you offer? And then just being able to say, is my child receiving any interventions? Because sometimes it's something that teachers won't mention. That during the day somebody is taking your kid and pulling them to another room and reading with them, and you don't know. And then they're talking about scores. Oh yeah, he goes this, or you hear your kids come home and say, Mrs. So-and-so, and you're thinking, who's that? I thought your teacher was Miss Jones. Like, who is that person? Oh, I go to her room too. So being able to say, are there any other people working with my child? Is there something that I need to know? That if he's being pulled out, even if it's for an enrichment. Okay, well, who is that? He takes all the readers that are reading above grade level and they go to him half an hour a day. Good to know. What's he doing with my child? And, is that during the school day? Is he missing work because you're pulling him out to this? So questions that you can ask that I can tell you as a teacher, I probably wasn't expecting from a parent. I probably wasn't. But they are great questions if I'm really invested in supporting my student in reading. Asking if your child's at grade level. Asking what area does my child need extra support? Because a lot of times a teacher standard will be like, well, he needs some extra support in reading. Great. What kind of support does my child need in reading? Like, what are you telling me? Do I need to get, does he need harder books? Easier books? What does he need? So asking that question. And if my child is reading above grade level, how can I support them at home? Because a lot of times in schools, there's a lot of focus on kids who struggle. And we just kind of leave kids who are at grade level or above, not that we're not teaching them, but we don't necessarily know how to work with them, and we need to be pushed. We need to be pushed to make sure every child is getting offered everything we have to offer. What kind of books should my child be reading at home? Are there any that you suggest? Are there things that you read here that he likes? And how often will I be communicated with about my child's reading progress? Am I only going to have to wait till the quarter when the report card comes out? Are you only going to call me when there's a problem? How can I communicate with you? Can I email you? Will you let me know? So I really think that the communication piece is really the key, especially between homeschool or home and school, tutors in school, whatever you're using, that you don't wait for a conference if you notice that there's a change. Even if you're homeschooling, if there's a change in your student's attitude towards schoolwork, just kind of being aware and knowing that could signal a problem and what can I do next. If the reading homework being sent home is too difficult or too easy, making sure that you're letting the school know this is, he's getting through this in 5 minutes, what are we doing? Or this is a battle, what are we doing? Letting the school or teacher know, or even tutors know, you don't understand the comments that they're making on assignments. What does that mean when you mark this or circle this or say this? I don't even know what that means. And so when I ask my 10-year-old, well, what does it mean when she says that? I don't know. So then really asking, I have this question about what you wrote on their homework, or what you wrote in their planner, or what you wrote on their progress report. I don't understand what that means and how I can help at home. Or if you notice that they're really struggling with reading or homework and it's just becoming a battle every night, communicate. Don't keep the battle going, communicate. So just then, I have a lot of ideas that PPLD already went through, just support and encouragement, and how to just help develop reading at home and encourage reading at home. And a lot of them are the same way. So I mentioned before Reading Rockets and how much I like it because they have a parent corner. And I have referred parents to it many times. So a lot of these 11 ways parents can help their children read are really based on a blog that's on Reading Rockets, and it's by a literacy expert whose name is Timothy Shanahan, and he's one of my favorite. If you have favorite literacy people, I guess if you're a literacy person, I like to go see him at conferences and stuff, so I guess I kind of fan out on certain ones, but he really is one that makes so much sense to me about reading. So just like they said with Pikes Peak Library District, teaching reading early. Start reading early to them, reading to your child day one. Teach them alphabets and sounds. Teach them how to write their first and last names. And, load tablets and phones and computers with literacy games. Teaching literacy and teaching reading isn't that much different than what you already teach your child. You teach them how to say please and thank you and brush their teeth and all these things. And teaching literacy is really very, very close to the same. Just being patient and kind of remembering that it's a journey. So if your child tries to write their name and they write a letter backwards, it's not an offense, punishable by law. Just let them, just the next time, just maybe you show them how to write it, but not sitting there and continuing to make them actually hate writing their name or hate reading. So thinking about just like no pressure, next time they'll get it. Just like they didn't learn how to necessarily wash their hands right the first time. They didn't learn how to use the spoon the first time right away. Same with all their literacy skills. And just thinking about your teen, and they kind of said this, your preteen or your teen is only interested in one book, let them read it. Keep trying, just like you would introduce new vegetables. I'm going to keep trying to turn you to this book. But if they are reading and there's a certain genre they are into, just as hard as it is sometimes because you're like, oh my gosh. But, let them kind of continue to choose because they're reading. And that's the thing that you want them to be interested in. They are interested in something.
So, if I can just add one thing.
Yes.
Also, make sure your kids are reading because
That's right.
I have sometimes asked kids to read and they take their little finger and they go across and say, I want you to read out loud. So I can hear what you're saying and realize they really didn't know how to read. They would look at the pictures and make up the story. So make sure they're reading out loud so that they really know the words because kids are very smart. They look at the pictures and they learn how to use the finger to follow the words and they don't have a clue any of the words on the page.
And that happens a lot when they love a book that you've read to them over and over and over again. And you're so excited because you think they're reading, but they just have memorized your book. They have memorized it because they ask you for it every night. And then they're reading it and they're doing their finger just like Deborah said. And they're just like, yes, I do not like them, Sam, I am. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, he's a reader. Or he's a memorizer. So really, that is really important. So make sure that you read to your kids when they are young and with your kids as they grow older. So reading to your kids really exposes them. Oh, I forgot number 3. Talk to your kids a lot, just like they said. Talk to them all the time. Reading is a language activity. And if you want to learn language, you got to speak it. That's how we learn how to speak foreign languages. You got to speak it. So you just talk to your kids all the time. And exposing your child to like a variety of words does increase their literacy. So when you're just talking to them and you're talking to them in adult terms and you're using that vocabulary, you're increasing their vocabulary just because they're used to hearing it that way. Read them, like I said, read to them when they're young and with them when they're older. A lot of times reading just like exposes them to richer vocabulary, and everybody who has a kid who's like in kindergarten or 2nd grade has read books that over and over that really are not rich in vocabulary or experience. So, and as a 1st grade teacher, believe me, read many stories. 1 pumpkin, 2 pumpkins, 3 pumpkins. And I'm thinking, Counting Pumpkins is the name of the book. And then I'm like, what is this story about? Counting Pumpkins, great job. But yes, reading to them. But then when I'm reading to them, I can read books that are richer because they're not trying to sound out words. I can read them books that are richer in vocabulary. And it's just vocabulary they may not hear a lot. And reading with them can go two ways. You can read a book and alternate pages and chapters, or for like your preteens and your teens, you can be reading the same book and have like your own little book club. Because a lot of times in the library, they have a book club section, and you can order multiples of a type of book for your book club. So you might say, oh, you're gonna read that, I'm gonna read it too. And we'll talk about it in the morning. Just to be reading with them and kind of checking their comprehension as they go, because you know the story, you know the book now too. Have them tell you stories, have them write stories for you. Have your older students like write down funny experiences they tell you about, or record it even on their phones, but it's a great way to build vocabulary and also to keep memories. So just writing about things that happen around them. With your little ones, just teaching phonemic awareness, doing rhyming games, the name game, breaking apart games. Again, using ideas from Florida Center for Reading, Reading Research has a lot of ideas. And they love to hear and like play with words. And when I taught first grade, that was like one of my kids' favorite things to do, was phonemic awareness, even when they got it. So I was looking for something to be a little harder, so we started doing Pig Latin, and they loved it. And it was like the advanced version of phonics for my high readers, because they still wanted to do it. But Pig Latin was a great way to kind of get them to learn how to manipulate words and make it a little more difficult. Teach phonics, teach letter names, teach sounds, not just the ABC song, but really teach them. Teach them letters, teach them the sounds that those letters make. Listen to your student read, even your teens. When your little ones start to bring books home, have them read to you. Your teens can read what they're bringing home as well. And ask them to read their science homework to you, or an article that they brought home for homework. Just say, can you just read it to me? I don't know much about plate tectonics or whatever. I don't know much about that. Read that to me. Promote that writing piece, because that really is, at the end, a good reader can become a good writer pretty easily, but it just takes practice. Literacy involves reading and writing, so have children keep a paper journal or an electronic journal. I have used Pinzu with some of my teachers. Pinzu is a free journal site where I can set it up that I can also see their journal. But it can be private, but it can be open too, and kids can just type entries in Pinzu. But I've done it even with a writing class that I did with my teachers, and then they could kind of write in the journal and I could check it too. Ask questions, even to your mumbling, grumbling teens. Ask questions that encourage them to retell what they're learning. Ask your older students to explain what they're reading about to you. Maybe they're just retelling you what they read, or they can explain a concept to you, but ask them to talk to you about it. Ask questions. Or maybe have them explain a mathematical concept or equation to you, because every time I can explain, I'm getting better at it. But it's a way for me to also be talking to you about what you're learning and what you're reading, and measure your understanding and comprehension. And just make it a regular activity at home. Go to the library, set aside time when your family kind of turns off the TV and reads. Read books as a family, especially when you know like a movie is coming out that's going to be based on a book. Read the book kind of as a family. Set up your Kindle app for free. Set up any of the library apps on tablets or phones. So like when you're waiting in traffic, when you're waiting at restaurants, so you don't have to take any more wax crayons home. Maybe you're just reading a book at the restaurant. Use your Prime reading account and download, if you have Amazon Prime, which so many people do, download the free books that are in Amazon Reading. For your Kindle or for Audible or whatever, for schools, like when you're coming back and forth for school. And just, a lot of times it's really hard because parents are like, well, some parents are like, I don't even really like to read, and I don't read all the time. I get that, But did you really enjoy playing Candyland either? Like when you were on the floor playing Candyland over and over and over again, it didn't stop you from getting on the floor and playing Candyland or Chutes and Ladders over and over again because you knew it was good for your kid. You knew that your student was learning colors and how to count, so you pulled out Candyland, even when it's missing cards and pieces, and you played Candyland. And then you played Chutes and Ladders. And then later on you played Monopoly, the game that never ends, because you knew this is great for my kids. This is great for my kids. Something you probably wouldn't do on your own, but you knew it was good for them. Same with reading. I'm really not a reader, but I'm gonna try because I know my student needs to see that. So I'm just gonna try. So, you know, many restaurants have incentives for kids. Chipotle has an incentive for kids to read. Pizza Hut, of course, has Book It, and they read a certain amount and they start to get free meals. Incentive charts for reading are ways to just kind of encourage, just like you do with chores, support and encourage reading as well. Exchange screen time for book time. You know, parents are good at making deals. 20 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of screen time, 30 minutes of game. You give me 20 and I'm giving you more. Do you see? I'm giving you more. Like you're earning actually 30 minutes, but I'm only asking you to do 20 of reading. Get them interested in a series or an author. Like I said earlier, even if it's one that you don't particularly care for, but if there's a series, then they're going to keep reading because they're going to want to read the series. And again, like the library said, like I said earlier, try not to criticize what they're reading and the reading choices they make. If they like science fiction and they are reading it, go with it. And you can still be like, yeah, but I remember how much I really love Treasure Island. And if they get interested, they get interested. But if you got a kid who's reading a science fiction book a week, good. Reading is not just like sitting in a corner with a novel anymore. You can help your teens find blogs even that are related to their interests. Ask them to read interesting posts from you from time to time if there's some things that they are interested in, especially your teens. Encourage them to read magazines, articles online, technical manuals related to topics or things they're interested in, because they're going to have to do that anyway, especially if they're teens. Use Audible for those earbuds. Listening to a book from time to time is a form of reading. Then talk to your child about what they're listening to, or listen yourself, listen in the car, and just have a discussion. Just thinking of reading out of the box, because I know for many of us, it was just like we go, we get a book, we sit down, we read a book. But there are so many more options for kids now for reading. And if we want to try and entice them by all the things that we have for them, there are ways they can read on those social devices, on those devices as well. And it really, to me, just comes down to when you support your child in reading, is that you're starting young, teaching and working with your child, and continuing to encourage the reading. Just knowing what makes a reader and knowing the skills, so you know what to ask. And you know where, if they're falling out, what it is they're falling out in. I think that knowing what questions to ask and just having the different parts of reading are just a better way for you to get help for your student or to push your student, because now you understand. And talking to people who are servicing your students becomes better when you're speaking their language. And also just communicating with anybody who is touching your kid in any way with reading. Being able to say, how's he doing in his reading fluency? I know he was really struggling. He's a slow reader, isn't he? But how's he understanding things? But just knowing your child, knowing what to ask, knowing, like I said, when you speak teachers, reading specialists, tutors language, you're going to get more out of what they can give you. just making it a regular activity. Even if you don't like to read, finding some way, whether you read the news on your phone, whether you read a magazine, whether you like blogs or in the car you're always listening to a book or something. And encourage or incentivize reading for kids. For older students, related to career interests as well. Every career is going to require that they read something. You know, they're going to have to read technical manuals of some sort. So that's that reading to learn. But no matter what they choose, if they're interested in veterinary science, then they're going to have to read about it. At some point, if they're going to go to school, if they're going to go to college to do that, for some of your older students, they're going to have to read in their job anyway. So just encouraging, you know, oh, you're really interested in that? You really would like to be a dentist? Let's see what we can find. So now I can open it up for any questions, and I'll do my best to answer. If you have any specific questions or you want to ask me anything about resources, I am open for that. Yes?
Do you think that, so I have a 5th grader, and like the graphic novel game has like changed a ton. And
It
so
has.
She really liked, like I read Babysitter's Club.
Right.
Babysitter's Club. Well, they went and made a graphic novel, Babysitter's
They
Club.
did.
Which is great. I mean, they're reading, but it's not as like words. You know, it's not as rich, I guess. So
It's not as rich. So in that term, you know, just continue to let her kind of read that, and then come up with maybe another, like a side reading project. If you really there's something else that you'd like her to read, maybe you're just like, do you want to have a book club?
yeah.
Because I want to have a book club, but I choose a book one month, you choose it the next. I read whatever you say, you read what I say.
Yeah.
And that way we can each like get interested in different kinds of books, and yeah.
Do you think it comes from, I mean, is there kind of a trend of like
There is.
fans and things like that?
I think there's a trend in attention spans, but I also think it's a trend in trying to get kids off of devices and more into books. So if I can make a book more like a device, a kid will be interested in it. You know, if I can make what they like to play more like, and I can turn it into a book that they like to read, then I can get kids into reading. And I think that that has a lot to do with it. Yes?
One of the things my daughter and I do to get her more interested is we have basically a deal. Like, okay, you can read the graphic novel, you can read the book that takes you 2 seconds to read, but when you're done with reading that a few times, next time we go to the library, you're gonna get a chapter book that's gonna take you an hour or gonna take you a little longer. And then the next time we'll do both. And you know, get your easy book, get the chapter book, then once in a while, let's just get a movie. Let's not even get a book, let's just get a DVD this time.
I think that's a great deal, but I do think it's kind of fun and to read with your kids sometimes as well.
That's a
Yeah, and be like, yeah, this is really fun.
I have younger kids, so I'm not as familiar with the graphic novel. I do a podcast that's called Read Aloud Revival.
Oh yeah.
It's just been really encouraging for how many connections can happen with our kids. I mean, it's hard to sometimes find ways to be creative with them in the way that they like to be imaginative, but I can sit down and read with them and make those connections with reading. And so that's been really encouraging. But this week her topic was on graphic novels and the pros and cons. Talking about even the classics like Anne of Green Gables or I don't know if Pride and Prejudice, but some of those, you know, Shakespeare, they'll have them in graphic novels now.
They do.
It gives your kids a taste for like some of the characters and things that make those hard, that when they get to them and they're like, oh, I'm familiar, and they can roll with that.
They do. I've seen the ones they have like with Shakespeare, with some Shakespearean stories, but I have seen those at the book fair.
One of the silly things we talk like that too, but we love to, like sometimes I'm trying to get their attention, you read in accents. So like,
I love that.
if people pay attention because they're cracking up at your wannabe whatever accent you jump from, it really gets their attention. And they want to hurry up and read because they want to do an accent. and it's fun to take them with that.
That's really fun. When I used to teach, I used to do that. Like try to put on an Irish brogue during St. Patrick's Day.
I was just gonna say my 8-year-old started doing that on his own this week. I don't know why. He doesn't like to read, and I think that was just his goofy way of making it more fun for himself. So I just let him go with it.
I would go with it because he's reading, especially for a kid who doesn't like to read. That's great. Yes.
Yeah, so we started when our kids were really little reading. They would get we call it a pick. They get to pick a book. And then we ran into a struggle as they started to get older. Then they started picking bigger books. And we couldn't read 4 books when we had like chapter books. And so now we let the littles pick their books, and then the older ones either have a chapter book that we're all reading together, or they have their individuals and we'll do a chapter a night instead of those books. So the little ones still hear the older stories, and then the older ones usually don't pay attention when we're reading.
Right. But that's a great idea.
Also, maybe have your older kids read to your
Younger kids.
because that's find their favorite book and then read that to them, because that encourages the little one to listen, but then the older one to be reading. That helps to encourage that piece. And anytime kids come over to the house, we can play, but let's read a story first and have a chance to do that. My youngest still has all of her little books on the bookshelf, and I've said, should I give those away? She's like, no.
She's like, nope.
Don't give those away, because when kids come over, I can read them. It's like my favorite books. They're like my favorite books, so we still have a bookshelf full of her favorite stories, and
Yay, Danielle.
Kids come over, so that's just a great way. And the kids say, "Can we take it home?" No, you can
Nope.
put it here, but you have to put it back on the shelf. So.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, if anybody has not read the book with no pictures, you should all go find the book with no pictures. It's the best read aloud, whether your kids are like 3 or 13, they will all laugh. Have you read the book with?
I have read the book with no
What
pictures.
is it called again?
It's called the book
with no pictures.
So it's just no pictures in the book, but it makes you say silly, stupid things. So, like,
It's so funny.
It is. It's a really funny book. I've read it. I have it.
Reading it.
Mhm.
BJ knew that the writer for The Office did.
Mhm. I do. I know that book. I love that book. But I still buy a lot of kids' books. I do not have kids. I do not teach kids anymore. But I do read to kids a lot. And I do still buy a ton of books. I do. I love them. I love kids' books. Any other questions or comments? I thank you for your time very much. And I just thank you for being advocates for your children.